Alright, hello everybody, and welcome to episode 10 of the Hockey Story series. Now, just like in every sport, losing is a pretty common occurrence. Whether you're lifting the President's Cup as the best team in the National Hockey League or on pace to winning the draft lottery, every team will have lost their fair share of games during an overwhelming 82-game schedule. Though each team has a similar opportunity to compete for the Stanley Cup, not everyone puts themselves in the best position to do so. Whether it's from poor roster decisions, a mere number of injuries, or just horrible luck, some teams who have the best chance of success are so far against them. Nobody roughly knows the circumstances about this in terms of expansion teams who had to build together through superior organizations from scratch before going on to be very successful instead of being blown out or at the very least embarrassing. However, out of all the teams in NHL history who have disappointed, underaccomplished, or were just plain atrocious, none of them have been as horrendous as these guys. In fact, this is the story of the 1974-1975 Washington Capitals, who are notorious for being the worst team in the history of the National Hockey League. In order for me to tell you this crazy story, I would like to take you guys back to November 1st, 1972, where the league awarded the late A. Paulin, an expansion team from Washington that would begin play 2 years later. Paulin was so excited to add another sports franchise to his collection as he built the brand new Capitol Center just outside the city in order to have both the Washington Bullets of the NBA and his new Capitals team. To start things off, A. Paulin would hire the late Hall of Famer Milt Schmidt as the first general manager. He has had great experience winning 4 Stanley Cups in his career, 2 as a player and 2 as an assistant general manager. By hiring Schmidt, Paulin thinks he is heading towards the right direction of his new team. On June 19, 1974, both the Washington Capitals and the other newest expansion team, the Kansas City Scouts, took part in the expansion draft, and from there, they chose other players from existing teams. And by that I mean we're not talking about defunct NHL clubs. Although the Caps acquired such players such as Ron Lowe, Yvon Lebre, Doug Moens, Tommy Williams, and Bill Clement, little did they know that they were going to be in for a tough ride. With the NHL consisting of 18 teams and the WHA having 15 clubs, the ability to add such talent is incredibly thin, and when the Caps and the Scouts were added, the problem became even worse, no doubt. Nonetheless, Washington has its roster all set to go and will be well rested for their inaugural season. On October 8, 1974, the Washington Capitals took to the ice for their first game ever in franchise history as they visited MSG to face the New York Rangers. Washington was not able to win their first game as they dropped that first game by a final score of 6-3. On a bit of a better note though, Capitals forward Jim Rykuk scored the club's first ever goal in the loss, whilst top draft pick Greg Jolly assisted on the second goal. Although they lost their debut game, fans in DC still had lots and lots of things to be excited about. I understand that they didn't stand a chance against a 50-year-old franchise at the time, but the bright side is 1 week later, Washington won their first game ever thanks to a final score of 4-3 against the Chicago Blackhawks. Right after this, Washington went forever without a victory as they had to wait for right about a month going 0-14-1 before November 19th of that year. From there, they won by a final score of 6-4 against the California Golden Seals. Unfortunately, the Caps followed that up with another long losing streak as they posted an 0-9-2 record before they beat the Toronto Maple Leafs 3-1 on December 15th. Washington then ended 1974 with a 6-game winless streak, meaning they went into the new year having won just 3 games along with losing 30 games and tying 4. Capitals coach Jim Anderson would respond, and I quote, "I would rather find my wife was cheating on me than keep losing like that. At least I could tell her to cut it out." As the club moved to the second half of the season, it was about to go from horrible to downright embarrassing as the Caps continued to win 1 game per month in the league's calendar. Well, okay. They did win 2 games in a single week on the 11th and 16th of February respectively, but this would be followed by a 17-game losing streak through February 18th to March 25th. Things got so atrocious that the Capitals went through 3 different coaches that season alone. Oh my goodness. On April 6, 1975, Washington played the 80th and last game of their inaugural season, and from there, they won by a final score of 8-4 against the Pittsburgh Penguins. When the final buzzer sounded and their season was finally over, the Capitals finished the year with the final record of 8-67-5. Let me repeat that again. 8 wins, 67 losses, and 5 ties in 80 games. In doing so, this placed the Capitals rock bottom in the standings and had been named as the lowest winning team to have played at least 70 regular season games. That record surpasses the 1972-1973 New York Islanders, who went 12-60-6. Washington finished so deep in the standings, posting 20 less points than the second worst team in the league that year. Think about it. The Capitals only got 21 points that year, and who was the next worst team in the league, you may ask? If you chose it, the Kansas City Scouts, you were right. Okay, their first year sucked hard as well, but they did win 15 games that year, and they also doubled their points more than Washington, so they deserve some credit. When you think that? These two teams performed so badly that some members of the National Hockey League are very concerned that adding them to the league had been a mistake. When the front office members puts you in the league, and having made a lousy first impression, sooner or later, players will tell them that they regret joining your league. Washington's record may be bad enough, but the numbers underneath it will cause their fans a headache. During this wretched season, the Capitals had 4 winless streaks of 11 games, as well as losing a grand total of 39 road games. 37 of them were consecutive. They also had a goal differential of minus 265, having scored only 181 goals to the 446 goals they allowed. If it's not bad enough, they're all NHL records too. Yikes! What about the players, you may ask? Well, there is some good, but nowhere near as good. Free agent signing Tommy Williams led the team in goal scoring, having scored 22 goals to go with 58 points, and Yvon Lebre was the leading scorer in the blue line, scoring 4 goals and 28 points in 76 games. In addition to that, Ron Lowe posted an 8-36-2 record, posting 1 shutout and a 5.45 goals against average in 48 games. Washington used 3 goalies, and yet Lowe was the one that recorded all 8 of their victories. secondary goalies John Adams and Michelle Belhumer fared poorly and watched their team played so badly and were not able to win a single game in 40 games combined. This is not even mentioning William Mickelson, who posted the worst plus-minus rating with minus 82 in 59 games played. That is no wonder why he didn't play the full 80-game season, because he could have reached triple digits, and that is no wonder that this team sucked horribly. To the surprise of no one, the Capitals' 67 loss year was nowhere near enough to help them reach the playoffs. Therefore, Washington desperately needed to get out of the grave they dug for themselves, dust themselves off, and come back much stronger than ever. Over the next 7 years, the Caps found themselves struggling for quite a while, as they came so close to making the playoffs in the final week of the season or sit in the bottom of the league standings. Following some changes in the team's front office, the trend began to be shifted as David Poile made a large addition to the club, acquiring Hall of Fame players. They include, but are certainly not limited to, Mike Gardner, Bobby Carpenter, Scott Stevens, Dale Hunter, Peter Bondra, Larry Murphy, Dino Ciccarelli, and Rod Langway. This group of league superstars helped the Capitals go from basement dwellers to legitimate Stanley Cup playoff contenders as they made the playoffs for the next 13 years from 1983 to 1996. Unfortunately, though, this was not enough to help the Caps to get any silverware, and they made it as far as the second round before being eliminated. The club was able to qualify for the Stanley Cup Finals in 1998, in which they would lose to the Detroit Red Wings captained by Steve Yzerman. But hey, it's better to make it to the Stanley Cup Finals and lose it than not make it at all. On May 13, 1999, the late A. Paulin, who watched the Washington Capitals go through its abysmal beginnings and recent success, announced that he sold the organization to Washington Sports Entertainment and current owner Ted Leonsis. Since the Leonsis era in the capital city of the USA, the Capitals have really turned things around and earned a reputation of being the top 10 teams in the NHL. With superstars such as Adam Oates, Olaf Kolzig, Sergei Gonchar, John Carlson, Braden Holtby, Nicholas Backstrom, and Alex Ovechkin, this organization has made it to the playoffs 17 times in the last 23 years. Despite being a mainstay in the Stanley Cup playoffs, the Capitals found themselves being eliminated year after year, and that is until 2018. On June 7, 2018, 44 years after entering the league for the first time, Washington eliminated the NHL's newest expansion team, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, in 5 games to win their first ever Cup championship in franchise history. After going through some horrible beginnings, and after years of being good but not good enough, the Washington Capitals have finally reached the top of being the best they are now. The organization has officially done the work, and the Great Eight, who won pretty much every award up to this point, has just got his chance to get his hands on the Stanley Cup. Now, although it was not the best first impression that the Capitals were hoping for, and with no pro talent available, the 1974-75 Washington Capitals were a team to remember, all being for the wrong reasons. They may not have been great, they may not have been good, they may not have been mediocre, but the way things are invented right now, it is highly unlikely that the record will be broken anytime soon. This concludes the story of the worst team in NHL history. What do you think of the 1974-1975 Washington Capitals? Do you think their record will be broken one day? You can tell me that in the comments down below. But otherwise, thanks for watching, and we will see you in episode 11.